This interview is for information only and should not be considered as investment advice or a recommendation to buy shares in the company featured. Welcome to this Stock Box interview.
I've got somebody saying there's no sound. Can you hear me still?
I can hear you loud and clear. Have we not got sound? I see Navy says, yeah, there's no sound. No, I think it's okay.
Okay, no problems. Okay, so I'll restart there. Sorry, guys. Marula Mining, yes, battery metals, critical metals, focused business, looking at developing mines here in East and Southern Africa, looking to enhance its listing status in the UK. I think that's well overdue. And obviously dual listings on other markets here in South and East Africa. Developing critical metals, copper in Tanzania, graphite in Tanzania, lithium, tantalum, tungsten, niobium, and other critical metals there in the Northern Cape province of South Africa. You've got lithium in Botswana. You have manganese here in Kenya. And looking at other critical metals here in East Africa, including the rare earths, including other similar projects to what we've got. So we're focused on growth now at the point where that will be funded through cash flow generation and through corporate activity in respect to other listed companies that we identify as giving us value.
Excellent. Thank you, Jason. And as we go through the projects, it might be worth just a few words, 30 seconds on each, just to set the scene. So if we start with Blesburg, I'll ask you this question, if you could just do a quick overview of Blesburg. Well, actually, the first question is, please give a short overview of Blesburg and the changes over the last 2 years, such as the expansion and the NCLT, and how this has changed the strategy at Blesburg.
Yeah, sure. Look, Blesburg was one of the first projects which Marula was able to secure. It's up in the Northern Cape province. It is South Africa's, the key deposit there is the Numus 1 pegmatite. It is South Africa's largest mineralized pegmatite. We initially focused our activities there based upon the stockpiles, the waste stockpiles from the previous mining, which had been focused on tantalum. Our view has changed considerably over the past 2 years. There's no question about that. From being focused on spodumene ore, so effectively a DSO lithium ore, given two key points, given obviously what's happened in the spodumene market with the price collapsing there, but also given the initial findings from the work, the exploration work that we've done there, it was very apparent that mineral suite was just not lithium. The value was just not in the lithium. It was in a variety of other minerals contained within that pegmatite. That's included the tantalum, that's included the niobium, the rare earths, the beryllium, a huge suite of minerals that initially weren't captured by our prospecting right, nor by our mining permits. So that caused us a need to reassess, reapply, and which has culminated in a 10-year mining right that's due to be issued shortly, and extends over, obviously, a broader suite of minerals. We've spent over 45 million rand on exploration there. That 45 million rand put into British pounds is roughly about 2 million pounds. So we've spent a lot of money there on a full suite of exploration activities, which included an extensive diamond drilling program. Whilst we've been doing that and we've been made aware of this increased mineral suite, we've increased our acreage, our landholding there from shy of 2,000 hectares to now being close to 28,000 hectares. That's included the adjoining Northern Cape lithium and tantalum and tungsten projects, and also the extension, the Blesburg extension, as we've called it. We've done that because of the confidence in the underlying geology, the mineral suite, and with the view that we're going to take Blesburg away from just being a reprocessing of stockpiles to a major processing center producing higher value products. We've talked in the past about the the joint venture that we're negotiating with a Chinese group, and now there is a Korean group that's got involved in that. That is something which we're very busy advancing, but it's something which has opened our eyes to the full potential there of what we've identified. Even the lithium, again, the pegmatites in South Africa are very different to what you get in Western Australia, which is where you get the most pegmatites mined, the most spodumene exported to China. The pegmatites in South Africa, and particularly in the Northern Cape, are very zoned. And a lot of the historical exploration, and even one of the drilling programs, which was an RC drilling program, which gave you no idea of these structures and was really poorly implemented. When we did our diamond drilling, we were able to see that the lithium was not just contained within the pegmatite and in one of those specific zones. The actual lithium had leached, had seeped into the surrounding material, the granodiorites. And we've had to subsequently test that, not just 1 meter into the granodiorites, but 5 meters in. So the extensiveness of that lithium is far, far more than what we anticipated at the beginning. So our plans and our understanding of that project over the past 2 years has changed massively because we've got to know more and more about it. And that's made us change our strategy, made us change our tact and how we're going to go about getting the best value out of it. You know, there's lithium which we've identified in the mica, in the feldspars. So material which we were going to sell on that sole basis now contains this material. So we have to work out how we get the best value of that. And that's also impacted not just on our mining methods, because in some instances, the blasting pattern and how much blasting you do in an open pit will impact on the mineralization there and how you can recover it, but also in the fundamental recovering of those materials as well. Hence the move towards not just that lithium carbonate, the sulfuric plant there, but also even the front end design of that plant using the TOMRA, using the radars, the crushing and screening. So Blesburg has been a tough project because it's bigger, better, and bolder than we thought, but it's very challenging because we've got to get the best out of it. And we've, you know, with countries throughout the world now wanting to get value addition, you know, we can't just throw away this high value product because at the end of the day, the byproduct suite on everything else there far outweighs the value that was initially identified in the spodumene laws. So Blesburg is, you know, it's almost a poison chalice, if you want to call it that. You know, it's great, but it's challenging, and it's certainly given our competent person who's doing and finalizing the competent person report, JORC compliant resource report, and is going to be releasing all that data. It's giving him a lot of challenges because he's not going to sign off until everything is captured. Hence the new applications which captured all these extra minerals. Hence, you know, the additional testing work which has been done over the course of the past year. So hopefully that's a great update there on Blesburg.
I think so. It is interesting what you say about it being a poison chalice, because of course when Marula first started, that was really your flagship project. That was all I remember we used to talk about. And I think that perhaps the beauty of what Marula have is the fact that as spodumene prices have come off, you're not just limited to, of course, that one commodity. So in a sense, that's good. You can perhaps focus elsewhere. I don't know if it's fair to say, Jason, that Blesburg has gone a bit on the back burner. I mean, the next question that came in was about drilling results that were never released. People seeing this as a bit of a red flag. Any chance that we can release these ahead of the CPR? And if not, can you explain why, to reduce the negative views? So I guess there's a couple of questions there is on those drill results. And also, is it fair to say that Blesburg is on the back burner?
Look, Blesburg's not on the back burner. I can categorically state that. The challenge has been a lot of the work which has been undertaken, and this is undertaken by our General Manager of Operations there, Henk van Zyl, supported by Martin Westerman, has been in, I guess, a lot of desk work in terms of getting the mining rights application in, getting that approved. It's going to be one of the first mining rights applications approved in that Northern Cape province for decades. So it's a major accomplishment there. In South Africa, when you do a lot of that work, as well as the environmental reports, the financial reports, the social and labor development plans, there is a tremendous amount of work which goes in there to get that done. So it certainly hasn't gone on the back burner. There's been a lot of work been done there, but a lot of that work has been ticking off all the regulatory approvals to allow us to move away from, look, we've got a mining permit, a 2-year mining permit, which we're halfway through from a time perspective, and turning that into a 10-year, then into a 20-year mining right. So there's a lot of work to get that done. That work has been needed to be done to allow us to then commit to the installation, the joint venture requirement for the big lithium sulfate plant, okay, producing the carbonate. That is needed because of the style of that investment, the amount of that investment, and the long life that has to support. So there's a lot of work which has been done there. You talk about those drilling results, you talk about the CPR and so on and so forth. I think I addressed a bit of that in my first kind of summary there. The drilling results, the JORC compliant resource, and the CPR is all to be released this quarter. The reason it hasn't been released is because it has been continually updated, given the additional minerals which have been identified, the additional test work which Jacques Perot, our competent person, has requested. And he's not going to sign off. And he's told us he's not signing off until everything is captured there. And he's controlling the outcome of that. So we are working to get that done. The analysis, the assay results have come through. All of that is being compiled now, but it is a far more broader CPR than we ever contemplated. The drill results were very, again, confident with what they're showing. Already they've shown that the lithium mineralization, which wasn't able to be picked up previously in drilling programs because the majority of it was not diamond drilling. And as I said, a lot of the pegmatites in South Africa differ from what you get in Western Australia, where they are very zonal at Blesburg. And this has been, Blesburg and that Numus 1 pegmatite has had over 100 years of historical work done on it. You can see it in all the South African geological journals, a lot of historical work. But over 2 years, we've done more than what's been done in the previous 100. We've spent over £2 million worth on exploration here. We've done an extensive drilling program. Those results will come out, the competent person, the JORC resource, and it will demonstrate what we've got and how that lithium mineralization extends well beyond what was originally contemplated and is picked up in the host rock, in the other minerals. And basically it's, there's really no waste there now at Blesburg. Everything is of value. Everything will be mined, processed, and if all goes to plan there, we will be producing both a high-value lithium product and multiple suite of other minerals, which will create a significant return for our project investment.
Okay, good. Thank you, Jason. So we can expect that, as you say, this quarter, those different elements there. Thank you for clearing that up. That does skip the next couple of questions. In terms of production, you mentioned that just now. Another question that came in was, when are mining operations due to start, and what product will the focus be when they do? Or will that we have to wait for in the CPR?
No. Look, I mean, that's going to be very clear in that case. We're waiting for that mining right application, so the mining right to be formally issued. That allows us to then to push ahead with that initial 10-year mining plan, which was submitted as part of the documentation process for that. As soon as that mining right is issued by the DMRE up there in the Northern Cape province, we are then in a position where we can appoint mining contractors who have all been on site, have reviewed what we're doing, have seen the mine plan, the indicative mine plan which Jacques has put forward, and we'll get going there. Our anticipation is that in the second half of this year, Blesburg moves forward at pace.
Okay. Step-by-step news releases. Have you got an idea of what we could be expecting to come following the mining rights application?
Yeah, look, I had a very detailed discussion earlier today with Hank and Martin down there in South Africa. We speak every other day, a big kind of ops meeting each and every other morning. So we've gone through a lot of the stuff there. I think having taken note of all the questions on Blesburg here, it's long overdue an update. So there will be very, very shortly, and I know people will say, what does very shortly mean? Okay, within the next 5 days, we will have an update out on Blesburg, just summarizing what's been achieved, where the strategy is, the direction, and how we're going to push ahead with that. You'll have that. Over the balance of this quarter, you're going to have, as I say, that CPR report. You're going to have the JORC compliant resource report. You'll have details on the mine plan. In much the same way as we put out numbers on the Khalifi project, you'll have very detailed numbers coming out here on Blesburg. You'll have an update on the proposed joint venture on that intermediate lithium plant. Like I said, we've got discussions that have been ongoing with both the Chinese group and an introduced South Korean group. As we've all seen, Trump's policies and his actions over the past several months have caused quite a rethink when it comes to the critical metals sector. And you've got a lot of companies, particularly up there in Southeast Asia, that need to demonstrate that their critical metals, which form part of their electric vehicles or other products, are not sourced from China. So strategically now, our assets, most of which are near-term producing assets, have become of significant note to a number of these groups. And it was no surprise when we were approached with the South Korean group, and they've accelerated their discussions there. And we've got other groups that are visiting our assets in Tanzania and Kenya here shortly. So yeah, we will get a lot of news out on that, updating how that impacts Blesburg and how it impacts on our lithium strategy, full stop.
Okay. Fair to say, a fair bit to happen this quarter then, Jason, with all those elements you mentioned, plus the joint venture conversations progressing as well. The final question that I had sent in on Blesburg was following the March 13th Q&A. Could have been a Q&A, could have been an interview, I'm not sure. But Blesburg, major Blesburg announcements, TOMRA sorter installation were expected within 4 weeks. So what's causing the delay? And is it related to any regulatory issues?
No, it's not related to any regulatory issues. It's related to one of the comments I made earlier about how that front-end plant, which feeds into the lithium carbonate, the sulfate plant, how that all ties together. So we've had a number of people look at the configuration there of both the TOMRA and the RADOS, the static crushing and screening, and how it flows all the way through. So there's been a rethink as to how all of that gets structured. Somebody's been suggesting that it's kind of the wrong way around in terms of where the RADOS sits in this. That's all being finalized over the course of this quarter. So once we have that finalized, and a lot of that is driven by discussions, obviously, with Chinese groups and so on. So we need to get that, I guess, in order. We're trying to optimize how we get a lot of this material processed. We're turning Blesburg into a major processing center. And that processing is purely not focused on spodumene. Blesburg is not a spodumene mine. And that needs to be made clear. And perhaps that's something I've got to get across more when we put out our updates. Blesburg and that whole area there now in the Northern Cape is a major processing hub for critical minerals. And those critical minerals will include lithium. It will include tungsten. It will include tantalum. It will include niobium, beryllium. It will include rare earths. That will become a very significant part of what we're doing now. So people will be able to see the value which has been created there by the whole £2 million worth of exploration work that's gone on. In addition to those critical minerals, what you also have on the side of that is the more industrial minerals. And those ones are the mica and the feldspars. Within the mica and the feldspars, we've already seen that the lithium is actually associated there as well. So that's going to require another challenge. The mica, there's obviously parties, domestic parties that can be sold to. Feldspar, we've been negotiating with two parties. Henk has been negotiating with two parties there about how to place that feldspar, because that, again, is a significant industrial mineral in Southern Africa. And there's two groups that we're looking and finalizing there. We've talked about feldspar, the value of that. The value per ton is actually greater than what you're selling spodumene for. So, and this is effectively a waste, a byproduct. So a lot to go on as to how we restructure, reconfigure that overall Blesburg processing facility, because we want to capture everything. You know, that's why we've moved from just having that Blesburg license of 1,800 hectares to that whole, footprint there now, which is over 28,000. That's quite a significant impact in terms of the license area. And we've done that for a reason. And we've done that based upon the geological knowledge that we've gained over the course of the past 2 years.
And when you say processing facility, that's purely for everything that Marula owns. It's not looking to process other operators' third-party material. It's just for what you've got or what you anticipate you have in the ground on your licenses.
That's what we've got on the ground there. But there's no doubt that Northern Cape province is fast becoming one of South Africa's re-emerging mining centres. You've got to remember, it's host to some world-class mines. It's got one of the biggest zinc mining operations in the world. By Vivanta, one of the biggest mining companies in the world. Literally, less than 50 to 100 k's away from us. It actually adjoins Neo's Henquis license. So you've got some massive base metals projects up there. That whole mineral suite up there in the Northern Cape is huge. And as well as those big world-class deposits, there is also other smaller projects which don't have the capital or the access to capital to process it. And that's where we have the capacity to really consolidate ourselves. And like I say, build something which is just more than a spodumene or a stockpile reprocessing operation.
Okay, excellent. And just to finish off on Blesburg, just to confirm, so you've got those main items coming this quarter, and then someone's mentioned that you were expecting to mobilize in Q1 with contractors, but did you mention that was going to happen the sort of second half, did you say, Jason?
Half of this year, as soon as that mining right, as soon as we've tied up a number of things in regards to the processing, then we will be moving forward at pace there.
Okay.
Henk he hasn't been twiddling his thumbs because he's been dealing, a lot of the community issues you've got to deal with there in terms of your negotiating with a number of those groups. It's a lot of work. And, it's at the point now where we do want to get started. We've got the communities that want us to get started because they see the nature of what we're doing and they want to see the value that comes into their communities by having a very long-term, stable, and high-value mining operation and processing operation established.
Great. Okay, thank you. Well, that concludes Blesburg for now, at least. Anyway, so let's move on to Kinusi. So 30-second introduction to Kinusi, first of all. And then the first question is on the metallurgical report, which I believe was expected in January, but has not been released. Is there a public release planned and already?
Yeah, I'll give you the high-level overview. Kinusi is a very high-grade copper project up there in the Dodoma region of Tanzania. The licenses are held by a Tanzanian company called Takela Mining, Tanzania Limited. We've got a great relationship with the directors there. And effectively, they've been brought into the Marula group. We've got a technical services agreement, a commercial agreement in place there, which gives us a profit share effectively from that operation. We are investing in mining, processing, and exploration. The project has demonstrated from the independent geological work done by Geofields, a Tanzanian-based exploration company, significant potential. They had an initial exploration target of 10 to 15 million tons of copper running at over 5%, and with the potential based upon a resource drilling program to get up to over 50 million tons. It's a fantastic project. I spent 3 years in the Congo, as many people will know. I saw some incredible copper projects there. When I look at Kinusi and the potential there, it's huge. It really is huge. And that's been demonstrated by the level of interest we've had from a multitude of trading groups based out of Singapore, based out of South Africa, based out of the UK. It's been demonstrated by the independent technical and geological consultants that have gone up there. MSA, for instance, and their people up there. Very excited about what they see. So Kinusi is to be developed as a conventional open pit operation and processing in a two-phase route. The metallurgical report that you talk about was being undertaken by our consultant, a guy by the name of Darren McGaw. Darren spent a lot of years in the DRC. I know the projects that he worked on in the DRC. He's currently working in Zambia as well with a British company, unlisted, called Moxico Resources, who have just brought in Zambia's newest copper cathode producer. He's been overseeing their copper heap leach SXEW operations. So he did all the initial metallurgical test work. He's effectively finalized his report. We have just shipped him some low-grade material, less than 3% material, which he is now doing some final test work because he's looking at that from a larger bulk scale mining proposition for the phase 2 copper cathode production. So that metallurgical report will be released in May. That will talk of we released the initial findings. The initial findings incredibly positive in terms of the leaching characteristics, the recoveries of that copper from the very high-grade mineralization. So that report will go out in May, and I think everybody will be very positive when they see the results from that.
Okay, thank you, Jason. So the next question on Kinusi is, does the newly installed phase 1 plant include mechanical lifting aids? Previous photos showed manual loading. which doesn't seem safe and scalable.
What we're in the process of doing there now is basically loading containers, which will go through the DAR, where they will be assays, where you do the check assays and so on. So there is a conveyor system which is being finalized to allow that to be loaded directly into the containers ahead of transportation through the Dar es Salaam.
Okay, good. Next question. What are the likely timeframes to get phase 1 plant to full production? Is there any more capex required to do so?
No major capex there. You're looking under that phase 1 to be producing about 2,000 tonne per month of that copper. We refer to it as a concentrate. It is a concentrate because we're taking it out of the run-of-mine grades, crushing and screening. There's some sorting that does take place. So you're producing call it a 25% copper con. We're aiming to achieve the 2,000 tonne run rate. If it's not achieved by the end of this quarter, then it will certainly be achieved early in Q3.
Okay. And when it comes to phase 2 plant, a similar question. Is there any indication of capex requirements? And if so, how will this be funded? Options could include shares issued to fund this, a debt or equity share, or other options, including perhaps off-takers being required to make a capital contribution towards that phase 2 plant. In other words, I guess a pre-purchase agreement.
Yeah, look, Darren's finalising the expanded capex for that phase 2 project. That'll be included in his final report, which comes through. In terms of funding that, we will fund that through a combination of cash flow from our group's operations. We will fund it from the contributions, the prepayments that we're negotiating with a number of offtake groups. There's 2 key offtake groups that we're dealing with now in terms of a long-term offtake arrangement. We hope, and I was on a call literally an hour and a half ago before this one, going through with them. He's actually based in Dubai. He's actually just come back from the DRC, actually, visiting some projects there. So we will be aiming to have the major offtake finalized before the end of this quarter. And as part of that, we are looking, given the high-grade nature of this and the fact that our copper cathode is unencumbered and clearly in demand, we are incorporating a prepayment structure as part of that. We will not be issuing equity to fund the development of the phase 2 plant at Kinusi.
Okay. So you say that all that financing this quarter. So does that mean, again, when it comes to agreements with offtake parties, they would also be finalized this quarter? And can you name the parties involved?
I can't name the parties because we've been playing a bit of we've been playing a competitive game with these guys. And we can do so because the nature of the interest, not just in the concentrates that we're producing, but in terms of the copper cathode. The reason we haven't put out detailed numbers in terms of revenues is because we're trying to get the best commercial deal for the project in terms of payability on the ores, and not just on the copper, but on the byproducts there, the gold, etc., that's contained within this. So we've got to get the best value, and that best value comes from the commercial terms, but it also comes from who the counterparty is. With everything that we try and do, you're guilty by association. So, for instance, you've seen us with our Khalifi operation. We've brought in Baosteel, a top 50 Fortune company, the world's largest steel company, the world's largest consumer of manganese. So they add a lot of value, not just in terms of the nature of the financial terms of their offtake, but obviously because of the validation, the third-party validation of getting a very high caliber counterparty to get involved with you. So on the copper, we are looking and we are negotiating with some very serious players in the copper sector. I suggest some of the largest, and we're also dealing with some of the lesser ones. But my preference is, like I say, I want that third-party validation of our project, and you get that by being able to attract your top-tier companies, and that's what we're truly focused on as well.
Okay, so you'd look to have those agreements in place, this quarter as well, would you? Or
yeah. I was, my own ambitions were to have.
What's the promises this quarter, Jason?
No, but again, look, this is our goals, this is our aims, and I know there's going to be a lot of people going, "Oh no, Brewer's done it again. He's come out with another timeline. He's come out with another target. Jesus Christ, you can't believe a word of what he's saying." Guys, I don't make these things up. I do not make things up. These are based upon everything which is presented to us. Okay, people tell me not to put out timelines, and then the same people a day later are saying, "When are you doing it? When are you doing it?" You're damned if you do, you're damned if you're not. We've got to deliver. I get that. I get the frustration that things have taken longer. Okay, but when we put things out, the process that we go through to put in place a news release, the verification work that our advisor goes through and keeps us accountable for is bloody hard. I mean, I had one of our shareholders out in Nairobi. He came out to do some charity work with us. And he actually was in my office one day whilst we were finalizing an RNS. And he basically lived and breathed that RNS throughout the day. He saw the process, the hoops that we had to jump through and everything. And he was in shock. A lot of people think that it's something which, I get the team here to draft, I do a review, I send it to the rest of the board and it goes out. No. Everything that we put out has to be verified. We need to put in the supporting documentation. Everything has to be supported there. So again, when I put these timeframes out there, it's not me going, yeah, that sounds about right. No, it's based upon a lot of work. The fact that those timeframes are then dependent upon other groups to deliver or are impacted by other aspects which are well beyond ours and their control. Again, guys, things don't always go to plan, but they get done. And I know that may not give people confidence or anything like that, but in regards to what we've presented today so far in terms of these timeframes and everything, hold me to them. They're going to be delivered, okay? So everything which I've talked to you about Blesburg, what I'm talking to you now about Kinusi, is getting delivered either this quarter or next quarter, as I've just stated.
Okay, thank you. Trial shipments then. So of the 5 trial shipments, customers for Kinusi, how many are progressing towards contracts for their regular monthly deliveries, and when will confirmation of payment for the remaining 200 tons of that first 250-ton trial shipment be received?
I've got your questions here so I can read them as well. Sorry, man.
Yes,
we've made it clear. I just stated there we're actually finalising with 2 groups now. We've still got 2 trial shipments to go through, so we'll do that. 3rd is in process. So we will wrap all of these up, but already it's quite evident, and I won't mince my words or anything like that. Already it's quite evident that there's 2 preferred parties. Okay. As I've said, we're going to aim to have all of them wrapped up over the course of this quarter and have those offtake agreements announced. Whether under those offtake agreements it's split between the 2 or we go down to the one party, that's something we're finalizing now. In terms of revenues on those things, in terms of revenues and actual revenues that we receive from each and every one of those, I've made it clear that the commercial nature of them is one that we're not going to release individual ones. We will, at the end of each quarter, going forward now, be releasing a very detailed quarterly report focused on production stats and financial performance over those quarters. I want us to move away from, putting out updates on a daily basis. Clearly, we've got our obligations to do continuous disclosure, and we will continue to do that. But in terms of sales, production volumes, and so on and so forth, I want us to move into a position now, which we are, of being a producer and being a stable producer. So on that basis, like many other mining companies, stable producing mining companies, we will be putting out those quarterly reports, half-yearly reports, and so on, so people can understand exactly where we're going from there. Because we don't expect, as we move forward, weekly, monthly sales to materially change or be too different from what we've identified through the budgets. And we are going to be releasing budgets, as we did recently with the Khalifi one, to allow people to better understand the overall project economics of these investments that we're making in those projects.
Okay. When it comes to the current understanding of the geological model for copper mineralization there at Kinusi, when is the drilling program expecting to commence?
We're waiting for the final proposal now from Geofields.
Okay.
Rich is getting to Dar, I think the 14th, 15th of this month. Collins is going to be heading up there in a week or two's time. So we hope that we anticipate, I should say, that drilling is taking place this quarter. We will release the drilling program. We'll let people know exactly what we're doing. That'll be used to define the initial JORC resources on that project and to basically confirm those initial findings of Geofields. Geofields will independently oversee that program. We are hoping to have our own drill rigs to do that. And that is something which I was hoping to be in a position to have announced already, but we're still working on that. We want to have our own drill rigs here in East Africa, a diamond rig and an RC rig, which we can use across our project.
Okay, thank you. Would there be a plan to increase Marula's stake in Kinusi to 80%? And are there any other opportunities to acquire additional copper projects near Kinusi in the future?
I think what you're going to see there over the course of this year and probably early next year is us move away from the current contractual relationships that we have to basically consolidate the existing PMLs into one larger mining license and basically have a more, I guess, traditional joint venture arrangement between us and Takela. As we do that, so we'll be consolidating at least those 10 mining license PMLs into a larger scale mining license. As part of that, we will be required to bring in the Tanzanian government for their required shareholding in that project because we're going to a larger scale mining license. And we obviously have the capacity to expand onto some of those adjoining areas in and around the Kinusi area. So that will be happening over the course of the second half of this year and the early part of next year.
Okay, thank you, Jason. So that concludes Kinusi. So let's move on to Khalifi. I know you had a RNS today, which gave an update on on Khalifi. I wonder if you could just give you a quick introduction to Khalifi to start us off.
Sure. Khalifi is a manganese processing operation based on the coast here in Kenya, about 60 kilometers north of the port of Mombasa. You've got that Khalifi region is well established in terms of small scale manganese mining, and that has been going on for decades. There's multiple small scale operations. There's been exports of the material predominantly through to China. There is a number of plants, 2 or 3 plants along the coast there, which are effectively washing that manganese. The manganese there is very unique in terms of it occurs largely as pistolets, little balls of manganese, and then beneath that you've got the kind of the primary mineralization. We're excited about what we've done there at Khalifi. We've done some significant modifications to the plant. Those modifications have been based upon a lot of the test work, sampling work that we did on the manganese mineralization in that area. That plant, the modifications are completed. The dry commissioning is completed. We're just installing some new rollers and new conveyor belts, actually, just to improve it even more. Those arrived at the weekend, so we just wanted to put them in place. And wet commissioning will take place over the course of this week. We've got an initial 25, 30 tons of material we're just going to put through the plant as part of that test work, just to basically verify a number of things. Everything is ready. We've been speaking to the team, to Todd down there in South Africa at Bauti. We were expecting to get production through to him last month. We are now aiming to get, it was supposed to be 5,000 tons last month through to him. We're aiming to get more than that through this month, and certainly in June, increase further. So what we may seem to have lost in time over April, we'll certainly make up in May and June, and then look at how big we can take it from there. So Khalifi, permitted, very good manganese processing operation, great location logistically, and very good manganese. So I'm excited about what I can deliver.
Well, you've answered the first question there on wet commissioning. So you said this week, effectively.
Yeah.
Wow. Okay. Excellent. Good.
I put
go
out
on.
some pictures today. I was going to put out some videos, but we'll have some videos out later in the week as we've got material going through the plant, as we've got trucks coming in, and so on.
Okay.
So yeah, that's looking good. Look, Khalifi is a great location. It's a great project. It's simple. It's very simple, and you know the scalability. If I can touch on today's RNS, the exploration team have done an amazing job up there. They've gone out, they've targeted several key areas, which are in addition to the places where we have, I should say, arrangements for the delivery and the purchase of material. It's in addition to the places we've already put in an application for a mining permit up there. There's going to be more applications going in. But the guys have gone in there. They've done some remote sensing. They've done some mapping. There's about 118 samples which have been delivered here already to Nairobi for assay. Assay results will come out over the course of this quarter, certainly well before the end of it. And already they've got resource tonnages there, non-JORC compliant. Let's be clear on that. They've done some very simple estimates on the volumes going down 2 meters. So you don't get shallower than that. So basically from surface down 2 meters, and you've got about 12 million tons. You know, we're going to be processing, you know, a couple of 100,000 ton a year out of this under the current kind of indications. When you've got 12 million tons just down 2 meters, and I think the average depth of the mineralization there is down 5 meters before you get into the really super high grade stuff, which we've already assayed and has come back on average about 65% manganese. You know, that shows that there's a lot of scalability in that area. And that's why we're working with groups like Bauti, and that's why we think there's a lot of value there at Khalifi.
Okay, and just a follow on from the wet commissioning then, do you plan to operate the plant on double shifts to meet that first shipment? And in terms of subsequent news, what can we expect to hear heading towards that first major delivery?
Look, I think it's like having a new car, isn't it? You don't jump in the new car and put your foot right down on the accelerator and go hell for leather down the M1, at 150 k's an hour. No, that'll be gradually weaned in over the coming days, weeks. But there's no reason why we won't be operating that 8 hours a day, that's for sure. We will be looking at operating that 10, 12, 14, 16 hours plus a day to make sure that we can start getting this material exported there. There's an opportunity which has come our way to do a lower grade manganese ore to Middle Eastern clients. Nairobi, Kenya, Mombasa port is half the distance to the Middle East than a lot of South African ports. South Africa is one of the biggest producers of manganese ores, biggest producers and exporter of manganese ores. And they're twice as far from one of the key markets. So we've got a very good logistical advantage exporting out of Mombasa to key markets such as the Middle East, Oman, and so on and so forth. So that presents us with an opportunity to produce a much lower grade product, which isn't captured under the Bauti arrangement, and which we can basically sell up there. You can potentially do sales there of 10 to 15,000 tons of lower grade product, which wouldn't satisfy the Bauti specifications, but would satisfy some of these requirements up there. So that's where you would look at what you could do in terms of maximizing the use of that plant. So it certainly won't be operating from a 9 to 5 basis. I can guarantee you that.
Okay, good. Okay, that's good. I think this is one last point. You may have already covered it, but just about revenue from Bau. When we'd like to hear about that.
Look, we've put out the key numbers on that. We get paid 90% of port. So I had Duncan in from Scan Global in yesterday. We went through. I've just been dealing with Mercy, who's the logistics manager there, just making sure that all the vehicles, all the trucks are lined up. The comment I got back from Mercy a few hours ago was, we've been ready and really looking forward to lifting some of those boxes for you next week. So are you trucking? We are on standby. We're ready to go. So that was the news from Scan Global. So we're ready
to get things moving then. Good. I don't know if you've seen what someone's put in the main
Oh, sorry.
group there. It must be from an LLM. It's not a question. It's just a calculation, I think, from a GPT engine or something. I don't. You probably can't comment on it, Jason. But
Is that on? Which one's that
sorry,
on?
yeah, it just in the main Marula Telegram group. They've just ran some numbers on the processing there,
On the manganese,
estimating.
yeah, on the manganese, we put out the numbers. We put out the numbers under the 5-year contractual arrangements there with Bauti. We want to get those numbers out for Khalifi. We want to get those numbers out elsewhere for the projects to give people an idea of what they can value that. The numbers on Khalifi aren't feasibility study numbers. These are actual numbers. These aren't estimates. You get a feasibility study, that's an estimate. And I've had this discussion with a number of people that sit there and go, oh, there's no feasibility study. Guys, you've got an area which is producing manganese, okay? We know the cost to produce it, to haul it. We know the cost to process it. We know the cost to export it. These are actuals. These are actuals. We have a plant that's built, not a plant that is forecast to be built with contingencies and everything. We have this. So when we put out numbers here, the level of accuracy is far higher than what you get in a feasibility study. We've all seen, everybody here is invested in companies where they put out feasibility studies. And I don't want to dwell on this point, but I just want to get my point across. We've seen a lot of people put out feasibility study numbers, okay, for projects which then end up in administration or in liquidation. And there's been many cases over the past years here. So when we put out numbers, we want to make sure that these numbers are accurate and we get those levels of accuracy from operating in these areas. And we have confidence in them. The logistics numbers we know, Scan Global have given them. We've got a contract with them. The port costs, we've got them. There's a contract in them. The purchase of these ores where we're not mining it ourselves, we've got it locked away. So we know our cost profiles very well. So seeing these sort of numbers put up here, we've put out our budgeted numbers. We know what they are. There's a bit of conservatism in there, but we know that this project, as it starts producing and as those revenues will come through from Baosteel under the 5-year contract that we've got in place, will have a serious impact on our cash generation, on our cash flow, on our cash balances, and clearly put us in a very good position over the course of May, June, and the second half of this year.
Would you agree with the numbers that are in that calculation, or could you not possibly comment? Well, I'll give you the estimated gross revenue: $39.6 million to $44 million per year. I'm putting you massively on the spot, I know.
Look, guys, look at the numbers which we've released. They're in the RNS. Okay. It would be, inappropriate for me to talk about these sort of levels here. It looks to be in the ballpark. I'll put it that way. So okay. I can't provide any more than that. Yeah. Those are revenue numbers. Those aren't cash flow numbers or net operating margins or anything like that. So yeah, based upon current prices per DMTU on the 44% manganese grades, yeah, those revenue numbers look in the ballpark. Yeah, there's no doubt about it.
Thanks, Jason. So let's move on to Larisaro then. So again, just a quick introduction to Larisaro if you can. Then we've got a couple of other projects and then we're on to some of the corporate elements. Yeah,
the Larisaro manganese mine is a small operation up just past Isiolo, near Archer's Post. We got involved there with a local company here last year. We put a lot of investment, a lot of activity in there. We did some initial sales with them there. There's no doubt that our attention has focused on Khalifi. The margins at Khalifi are significantly better. In addition, we now own 100% of Khalifi. So we've got full control over there. We're operating under a mine services agreement up there at Larisaro. I think we're reviewing our position there. I think that's fair to say. The logistics associated with that project, that's inland. It's hundreds of kilometers from Mombasa Port. So logistics, even though we're using Scan Global there, who are proven and who have done that for us already, the scalability of that to justify moving it to rail, because at the moment you transport by road the material from Archer's Post, from Larisaro through to Nairobi. where it is then loaded into containers, and then it goes to the port by rail. So there's a lot of rehandling. It's not as an efficient project as what we have at Khalifi, and I think it's certainly something going forward we need to have full control over our project activities. So it's something we're just weighing up at the moment with Larisaro, because again, great high grade manganese there, but I think we've just got to put it in perspective as to where we put all our money and where we get maximum value back. The margins we're getting at Khalifi far in excess of what you can get here, and it doesn't matter how efficient you improve things inland. When you're only 60 k's from the port, it's a no-brainer.
Okay.
In addition, just to add as well, at Larisaro, it's a different type of manganese, so it's drill and blast. At Khalifi, it's free digging. There's no drilling, there's no blasting. Basically, it's just using an excavator and loading from there. So the cost profile is far superior, like I said, at Khalifi. So we've got to get best value for the company. And at the moment, from a manganese point of view, I can categorically say the greatest value for us is what we see at Khalifi.
Okay. So Larisaro is potentially on the back burner here. You've given a bit of an update there. But any timelines on meaningful cash flow, or is it fair to say this is on semi-hold for the moment?
It's almost like, for those people that watch Formula One, you had Lewis Hamilton that was winning everything a couple of years ago. Now he's coming in 7 or 8. So, as you move forward with any company, you've got to constantly reevaluate where you are investing each and every dollar of shareholders' money. And as we do that, and as we move forward, certainly over the past several months, it's become apparent that if we're going to invest in manganese and build a big manganese business, if I put $100 into Khalifi, I know I'm going to get multiples of that 1 month, 2 months, 3 months down the track because of the superior project economics, logistics, and our own effective ownership of that project. So we have to constantly reevaluate. We have to make some tough decisions. We have to make some easy decisions at times. But from a manganese point of view, I know Khalifi is going to add significant value to this group and far outweigh, and maybe I'm speaking a bit out of tune for those people that have been there on Larisaro, I think Khalifi is going to be a big thing for us and for Kenya too.
Okay. Well, thank you, Jason. That concludes that on Larisaro. So Bauti then. So this is an interesting new addition to the portfolio here. So let's just give an overview, if we can, to start off with on this.
Yeah, look, this has only recently been announced, and I guess there's a lot of strategic reasons why we've got involved in this. Obviously, we've got our lithium project in the Northern Cape province there at Blesburg, and where we're looking at producing high-value products. Lithium brines is something we've been looking at for the past, 3-4 years, and we've been looking for the right project to get involved with. We've been looking in South Africa, we've been looking here in Kenya and East Africa. Botswana is something we identified, and thanks to Hank and the team down there in South Africa, we've pushed ahead on this. It's lithium in brines, salt pans, where there's a fair bit of historical work that's been undertaken, where there's current exploration, not just by us as a listed company, by other listed companies in the UK. So there's a fair bit of news which is coming out on this area. So as we look at this, this gives us access to a very good team in Botswana. It gives us access to a lithium processing technology, direct lithium extraction, which is transferable, which we hope to use elsewhere in East Africa and Southern Africa. And it further cements our position in the lithium space. And people have said, why have you got involved in lithium again now? You've seen what's happened there and so on. Look, I guess we believe that the final product coming out of this, the lithium carbonate, is a high value product than the spodumene and other things. But I think strategically it's important to be involved in the Bauti project, involved with that management team there at GeoWise, and to basically build this as an additional leg in our critical metals business. Botswana as well, an incredible jurisdiction for us to work in, and it's often referred to as what the Switzerland of Africa. I think that's an unfair kind of comparison to make, but it's got a very good history of stable mineral investment and investor-friendly policies.
Indeed. No, indeed. Okay, just a few questions on here then. So future payments are based on a completed feasibility study. So what kind of feasibility study will be used, and will it be made public?
I think a feasibility study is a feasibility study.
Okay.
I've talked about my own thoughts on feasibility studies. Here it's different because, again, this isn't a brownfield project. This isn't where you can see that mineralization in your face, and extending for hundreds of meters like what you see at Kinusi. And it's not like Khalifi, where you've got multiple small-scale operations and you've got pits and stockpiles of manganese ore. Here it's very different. So we will be doing a full-blown feasibility study, which will be done by independent consultants, and the results of which we will release to the market.
Okay, thank you. Reference has been made to looking at the partners that you're working with over there. So can you elaborate on who they might be?
Oh, look, GeoWise, we've mentioned who we've worked with there. It's a company called GeoWise. The people behind that are very well placed in Botswana in terms of not just the lithium projects that they've got here, but other access to other strategic mineral projects. And, when we get involved with people, when we get involved in projects, it's more often than not, it's with the people. Okay. And that's what leads us to do other projects with them. So I think that's why we're very confident here. It's a very good team. I mean, the due diligence process and that whole process to finalize this agreement has been fantastic, I must admit. What we've been able to achieve in a relatively short period of time with them, gives me confidence, not just on this project, but other opportunities there in Botswana. And I think when we get involved in a country, you want to have a critical mass. You need a critical mass there to be of significance. So that's why I like the team, and I think it's important to look at that team at GeoWise, the management there, and what I believe they can bring. Technically, incredibly competent, and that's what we like.
Okay. And finally, on this, we've got a question here that was about geothermal. So there's been a few mentions of geothermal. Can you go into more detail on this for Botswana and/or Kenya?
Yeah, look, I mean, for everybody there back in the UK, you've seen one of the companies down there in Cornwall. Is it Cornish Lithium? The guys that are looking at, there's the old geothermal well at the Camborne School of Mines. I remember it.
Oh, really?
From when we played rugby against them. It's been one of those projects which the government piled hundreds of millions into. And it's one single geothermal well there. And they're trying to extract the lithium from the brines. And I think they're also trying to extract the lithium from the seawater, which has flooded some of those old tin mines. Kenya's the seventh largest geothermal power producer in the world. And there's been a lot of focus on the potential to extract lithium from the brines there. And that's something which has clearly caught my attention over recent years. And you've got GDC, which is one of the major producers here. Kenya's, from a geothermal point of view, is actually exporting its capabilities, its technology into neighboring Tanzania and Ethiopia as well. So the opportunity to look and use our experiences over the coming months in Botswana and using that technology, using those exploration techniques up here in Kenya, where you have multiple wells, multiple geothermal power stations, where the brines have been identified to be containing lithium as well as high levels of silica. It's something which has obviously got my attention. And if we can transfer our knowledge, which we gain out of Botswana, to places like this up here, then, why shouldn't we? It makes a lot of sense.
Okay, thank you, Jason. So finally, on the project, and we've got Nyorinyori. So maybe you can give the introduction, but also perhaps answer the question at the same time, which is to do with the current time frames for this project. Will it be able to generate revenue to help fund drilling? And if so, when?
Yeah, look, Nyorinyori and the Nyori Green project is a series of mining licenses up there in Tanzania around Moshi. We've increased our mining licenses there over an 18-month period from, I think initially we had 8 or 10. We've now got, I think, 33, most of which are contiguous. Whilst we were doing that, you saw a tremendous amount of activity by other people around us. And I think in a 1-month period, there were well over 200 mining license applications in that area, just kind of following on from some of the stuff we did. So Tanzania is one of the fastest growing graphite producing regions in the world. You've got a number of projects which have been advanced, mostly by ASX listed companies, but also by some UK listed companies there. Nyorinyori is in partnership with Takela Mining, who clearly we have involved with at Kinusi. And then you have the Nyori Green, which is another local company up there. Initial work there identified some incredible graphite. And I think I actually had the benefit of being on site there with right early on with one of the Marula shareholders. And he was able to see the graphite as well firsthand. It's incredible graphite. Normally when you see graphite, it's like specks in like a granite or a gneiss. Here, it was almost solid graphite. And the jumbo flakes, the large flakes, it was just amazing to see. And I'd never seen anything like it before. I can categorically state that. You have neighbors there, small-scale Tanzanian guys, who are mining that material, no processing, just selling it as DSO, putting it in containers. And we've been stuck on the road behind about 30 truckloads of these containers going out, and basically exporting it through to India, Sri Lanka as well, I think it is, and getting over $1,000 a ton for this stuff, unprocessed. For us at Nyorinyori, the opportunity there is to fast track that into production, but look at a way of processing which allows us to get maximum value, not produce a raw product, but at getting a processing route. And typically graphite is done through flotation, because obviously the graphite flakes very light there. It's working out how we get the maximum value out of that, but perhaps not going that full flotation route. So that's some of the work that's ongoing. Nyorinyori, again, I don't know how some of our guys do it, but we have a great knack of finding some incredibly good projects from a geological and a technical perspective. And it now comes down to us as to how we maximize those values. So we will be drilling that hopefully before the end of this quarter. Okay, I'm waiting for geofields now, for the drill program there. We're going to do more trenching work. We've got to do some upgrades to infrastructure there. I think Kinusi has certainly, leapfrogged it and given what we're doing there. But in what we're doing in the graphite space, and we are going to expand our graphite to also include projects here in Kenya. Geology doesn't respect national boundaries, as everybody knows. So we're looking at ways of really growing that graphite business on the back of early cash flows out of there. I've made it known that I want to see Nyorinyori operating before the end of this year, in the final quarter of this year. We will be pushing hard to get that done. But hopefully on the back of cash flow generation out of our other assets, we will be able to allocate a lot of capital to basically push ahead and get some of that stuff done.
Okay, well, thank you, Jason. So that's all the projects. So we've got a few questions now on the corporate side. Yeah. Some might be a few worded answers, but hopefully some are just quite quick. I want to get through them. Time is, of course, precious. So the first one, it's a big one to start with, I suppose. If the projects at Marula are all so excellent and fast-paced, why they need to be involved with so many other mining companies, for example, Caracal recently? Can you appreciate it causes some Marula investors frustration, especially when the share price is so low and they see the CEO getting involved with other companies?
Yeah, look, I can see that, but I think, and I've made it clear as well to a lot of people when they've asked me personally this, and people that have come out here and met me, and even people I've met in London as well. Marula isn't just me. I'm the one that you see, Mark. I'm the one you talk to and do the interviews with, and so on and so forth. But it's far more than me. Some of the other directors we've got involved in this company are absolutely incredible. If I look, one of the unsung heroes of this business, There's so many of them, actually. But look at Munya down there in South Africa, in Zimbabwe. Some of the stuff he is doing for us at the moment will have such a material impact on this business going forward, not just over the course of this quarter, but thereafter. Okay, you look at someone like Munya, very understated, but one of the smartest guys I know, and with some incredible connections there in South Africa. I look at someone like Hannah Wangombi here. She was the CEO of Awake, which is the Women in Extractive Industries here in Kenya. She is now the representative for Oxfam here on the natural resources side. You know, what she brings is very important to us from a lot of our community, social responsibility, our engagements, and so on. I look at Henk and Martin down there in South Africa. They are one of the biggest assets of this company. So Marula is not just me. I may be the voice that people hear or the video that people see and so on. But to associate Marula with just me, and I know it's hard, but the amount of work which goes in by the team here in Kenya, in Tanzania, in South Africa, and elsewhere, and even, you know, look at what Richard and Angie do in London. What Rich, you know, increasingly spending more time. He's out here in the next week, actually. When you see what people are doing, I think it's unfair to just associate it with me. I'm working my ass off, don't get me wrong, but so is everybody else. And I wouldn't get involved in these other things if I felt it would be to the detriment of Marula. I'll be very clear on that. I would. Marula is my love, okay? It's something which I believe we can make a very significant player in the critical metal space. And the ambitions that I show and talk about are shared by everybody in this group, okay? They are. And I think, like I say, people need to give a bit more respect to some of the other people that, you know, aren't too keen to get into the limelight, are quite happy for me to be pushed forward. But they're the ones that are quite quietly and calmly in the background, getting on with a lot of this work and getting it done. I mentioned Henk and Martin earlier. The work they have done down there at Blesburg in terms of getting, you know, one of the first mining rights approved in the Northern Cape province for decades. You know, that is a huge feat, a huge accomplishment. Working with all the communities down there in a very impoverished, very disadvantaged area. You know, the challenges he faces each day, you know, I couldn't deal with, but he does, and he goes about them. So Marula, again, I'm not getting involved in these companies at the detriment to what I believe is going on at Marula. If the share price was flying at 10, 20, 30, 40 pence, I don't even think this would be a discussion point. Okay, if people want to attribute the share price to me allocating some of my day to these other projects, I'm sorry, guys, you're wrong. That's not the reasons there. There's other reasons, and people can throw whatever reasons they want at us. You know, we need to deliver. I need to deliver. Our team needs to deliver, full stop. And then we'll get that recognition in the share price. But please do not associate it with me being what people may think is being distracted with other things going on. I'm not. There is a huge team here. And I'm very proud of that team. Be very clear on that.
Okay, thank you. So the next couple of questions, or next three actually, around sort of CMC and AUO. So let's see how we can get through these. So do we accept that it's likely that CMC sold down the recent allocation that they were given of the AUO facility?
Look, the relationship there, I've had a lot of discussions about AUO and CMC and what's going on there. I spent a lot of time talking with their advisors, speaking with AUO. I had a lot of time actually speaking with Aquis as well, addressing some of the concerns which clearly shareholders had raised. I'm disappointed with what's happened there. There will be a formal RNS coming out, hopefully within the next 5 to 7 days. It may be a little bit longer. There are actions being taken by us as a company. That will be made very clear. And I think when people see that, they will understand the direction that we're going in regards to that. So there's not much more, Mark, I can actually say on that at the moment.
Yeah.
I think you and others may get the gist of what I'm saying.
Sure. Still on the same sort of subject, do the shares placed through CMC count towards a total AUO subscription shares at 3.75, or are they additional? Will the remaining 3.75p AUO subscription shares be utilized or cancelled? And what's the timeline for resolving?
Okay, so everything that's been issued under that AUO facility is issued under that AUO facility. We've made it clear, I've made it clear, sorry, in what we've said here, that we will not be using the equity markets to raise capital for any of our project developments. So you will certainly not see us utilize any available or new equity partnerships to bring equity into this business. There's no need.
Okay. And is AUO Fund still actively supporting Marula by buying outstanding warrants rather than placing shares via CMC?
I don't quite understand what you mean by buying outstanding warrants. There's no. I'm not quite sure about that. If you look at the warrants that are outstanding for Marula at the moment, and these go back almost 3 years now, there is 4.7 million warrants which expire 30 June, roughly 4.375 million that expire 30 June, and there is another 7.6 that expire 31 December. Strike price for each of those are 4 pence. Nobody's buying them back. Nobody's doing anything with them. The ones that expire in June are held by 5 individuals that got involved in the financing way back in 2021, I think it was. And the warrants that expire in December are held by roughly 18 parties. And they were ones which participated back in that financing back there at, what was it, 2 pence with a 1 for 2 free attaching warrant of 4 pence. So they should all be out of the way over the course of the next, 7 months. We will not be issuing any more warrants. I want a very clean and simple capital structure. So we will not be issuing warrants for any related equity raisings because we're not going to be doing any related.
Okay. I guess the question is, if AUO have warrants, will they exercise them?
I don't think they have warrants, do they?
They don't, right? Okay. No. Because you can only exercise them if you have them. Okay.
So, and they're not buying them because I don't think the ones which are held by those individuals are non-transferable. So
No, but AUO are still supporting generally, as you said in the previous question.
I'm supposed to be speaking to JJ, who's the COO or the Chief Investment Officer. I think you may have met JJ and Quinton earlier today. There's a number of discussions going on with them. JJ's based down there in Joburg. You've got Quinton there up in Dubai. I'm going through Dubai, I think about the 25th, 26th of this month. I'll catch up with him. A great person to talk with, great ambitions and so on, very supportive of what we're trying to achieve. There's no question about that. But again, as a businessman, he's facing his challenges as well. He's been involved in South Africa's coal sector. I think that's where he's made the majority of his money, back in the coal sector. And the coal mining industry in South Africa has been massively challenged over the past 2 years. And that's obviously impacted him in some way.
This next question, you mentioned just earlier that you don't plan to do any equity placings because of the access to funds you've got. But this question asks, if Marula becomes a regular producer and if the share price rises, would future placings be at a premium prioritized over the remaining 3.75p AUO shares to avoid depressing the share price? So I hope you understand that. I know you can see that question, but if you could just explain, what would happen if the share price rises significantly in terms of getting cash?
We're not going to be using that. So there's no discussion there. It's not relevant to the future activities of this company. So we move forward. The idea, as I've said, is that we will be using the cash flow generation from each of the projects, and we will be using the debt side of the balance sheet. And that's traditional debt. That's not converting debt. That's not debt with any, you see a lot of debt structures being done, particularly out of North America and particularly by, a lot of these boutique groups that masters debt, but really is some quasi-equity structures. I've worked in the debt markets when I was a banker at Rothschilds, at Dresser Farmer Benson, at Investec. We're not going down that route. We will not go down that route. we will be using the debt side of the balance sheet, the traditional debt side of the balance sheet. We will be using our production of metals to basically bring in capital to this business as and if required. But to the large part of what we're doing with our business, it's now at a point where we can put our hand on our heart and say, cash is king, and cash will be able to allow us to, expand what we're doing at Khalifi, at Kinusi, do the stuff at Blesburg, do all those other activities which we're, chomping at the bit to get done.
Good. And the last question here on AUO, has the apparent lack of AUO liquidity slowed development across the projects at all?
No, look, I think, we're a company like anybody else that that needs to allocate its capital to the right projects. And I mentioned it earlier when I was saying, how do I choose to allocate capital between Larisaro, for instance, and Khalifi? How do I choose between Kinusi and Nyorinyori? Each one of those projects has its merits. There's not enough dollars to go around to do everything. I'm not a child in a candy store. I can't just help myself to everything. So we've got to be quite mindful about what we're doing. But capital it's not just capital which we have to concern ourselves with. It's our own human resources. We've got to make sure we have the people within this business that can deliver on all those projects. So I can't just go and throw money here, and here. And I can't go and get people involved in this business that I don't have trust and faith in their capabilities. So, there's places where some of our project developments have not gone as fast as I'd wanted. But I can tell you that hasn't been down to capital, financial capital. Part of that has been down to the processes that we've got to go through, because there are regulatory processes that we have to go through to get necessary permits and approvals in place. But to the most of it, it's actually down to people. Getting the right people in the right spot is very important for us. And that's why if you look at the people I work with, it's a fairly close-knit group of people. You see Edward Raheny, who's involved from the Tequila side, but we've got him more involved here now on the Marula side, overseeing some of our operations here in East Africa as a whole. I've got what Henk and Martin do. I can't speak more highly enough of them, what they're doing. I look at what we're doing with, like I say, Nyorinyori in South Africa. I see him playing a much more significant role in this business going forward. You've seen us just set up an advisory board. There's reason why we've set up an advisory board, because again, given our ambitions at the pace that we want and the pace at which we want to go, I think it's important to bring in people that have incredible skill sets and can add value to us, and potentially we can bring in on a more kind of permanent basis, a more full-time basis within the group. So I look at, Hubert based out of Rwanda with some of his climate change funding, his green funding initiatives, introduced through Munya as well. Amazing. Lemahan. How often can a junior company get access to a CEO of a state-owned mining company in South Africa? It just doesn't happen. But we've been able to attract these people here. And part of that is because I guess we recognize that human capital, human resources is the one thing I think which has probably held us back a bit, and where we need to bring in these skill sets. And we're going to bring them in gradually and make sure that those people that we bring in, give us the right skill sets and are complementary to what we do. So it's not to do, yes, I would love to throw money around, but guys, we've all seen what happens when you throw money around. People have, if I go off on a tangent here, Mark, I'm sorry, okay?
Okay.
No, people have looked at us and say, why is Blesburg taking so long? Okay, and why are we doing it? It's taken so long because we've got to get it right. Okay, we've got to get it right. Such as that mineral suite there. I don't want to do a Zimbabwe and spend hundreds of millions on a plant to recover lithium that doesn't. Okay, I don't want to be faced with massive debt burdens which I can't repay because I've got a processing plant that doesn't work. So we want to go things about it in the right way. So when we look at what we're doing at Blesburg, we're very fortunate that we can look around and we can see what people are doing right and what people are doing wrong. But I tell you now, the one thing about getting things right is you've got to have the right people on board. And that's what's kind of, we're not going to jump into bed with someone purely to fill a void. We've got to have the right person that brings the right values to this company, okay? And that's very important for me. So it's less about capital, it's less about finance, it's about getting the people on it that can deliver. And I think our shareholders question me on our ability to deliver. It's people that deliver projects, okay? It is people that deliver projects. And that is the key thing, which I want people to start taking note of what we're trying to achieve here in East and Southern Africa.
Okay, well, thank you for that. So let's get through these next ones swiftly. You've answered the next two, I believe. So on the actions perhaps contributing to the share price fall, you said there'd be an RNS coming out. When do we foresee income covering expenses? You've said that should be this year, I believe. A question here on when does Marula expect to achieve, or does Marula expect to achieve profitability in 2025? I think the answer is yes. But a second point to that was the dividend. Is a dividend feasible this year? I think there was perhaps an update recently which suggested the interim dividend could come. That would be significant if you can announce that. So just confirm if you can, Jason, profitability and if there's a dividend on the cards.
Yeah, look, I'm happy to announce that. Look, profitability, look, the accountants play with profits, and if anybody can read annual audited accounts these days with the different financial standards which are coming in, it's a tough read, let's be honest. What I want to see is that we are generating, net project cash flow, net operating cash flow. So cash flow which we're generating out of all our projects, net of all of our costs, is positive. And I believe we're going to get there this year. I know we're going to get there this year, okay? Yes, I've said it. I'm probably going to get smashed by people for putting that out there so publicly. Yes, we will get there. I'm very confident about that. If we're able to deliver on what we've said, both at Kinusi and Khalifi alone. Khalifi alone will be more than sufficient to support this business. Profitability, like I say, that's where you get one-off things that come in from the accountants, revaluation of this and so on and so forth. I'm a very simple person when it comes to finances. If our revenue far outweighs all our costs from a perspective of both development capital, corporate costs, and mine site costs, then we're doing damn well. My ambition is that based upon some of the stuff which we're doing now from both a corporate perspective and obviously what we're looking to achieve over May and June out of Kinusi and out of Khalifi, is that, come record date 30 June, I would love to be able to announce a dividend. Yes, I would. Am I foolish to say that publicly? I'm sure some people will say, yes, I am. But that is something which I am very keen on, which we've already discussed at the board level. Do I want each and every 6 months, 30 June of each year, 31 December of each year, to be able to come out with an interim and a final dividend? Yes, I do. Do I want to be able to announce a special dividend? No, because a special dividend is a one-off. Okay. So I want to be in a position to be able to come out regularly each 6 months, those record dates, bam, bam, bam. If we can do that, and that's clearly what my focus is on as a major shareholder, clearly I'll benefit from that. But I think the company perception in the market will change quite significantly as and when we achieve that. I've been massive, I think I've told you before, mate, I've been a massive fan of Caledonia Mining in Zimbabwe. What they've done in terms of returns to shareholders, in terms of dividends, on a regular basis, and typically increasing as well, has been nothing short of great to see. And it's something I've got a lot of respect for their management team on, their corporate team. And if I can kind of mirror that with what we're achieving at Marula, then yes, I'll do that.
Okay, good. It's one thing to say you want to, it's nothing to do it, I suppose, Jason, but your ambition is there, so you will do it, I'm sure.
I'm nothing short of ambitious. You know that, okay? And, I'll get a lot of people criticizing me after today, I'm sure, because I've come out. I've even had our media guys here, Faith and Clara, going, Jason, whatever you do, be measured, be this, be that. I think I have, haven't I? But no.
Yeah, I would say so.
Compared to normal, I think I've been relatively measured. I'm not over-promising. But when it comes to dividend, this has been something which I've discussed here. I had time today with Hannah. I've got Richard here in a couple of weeks. I'm speaking to Martin today. Speaking to the guys and saying, guys, this is where we're likely to be. And to be able to turn around and do something like that and deliver, okay? So all these people there, these anonymous posters on LSE or on Twitter or whatever, guys, there's something I love to do. It's, yeah, I think I was chatting to Coxie the other day. He didn't realize I'm a big cricket fan, okay? You can't actually see the cricket on in the background here at the moment behind me, but I'm a big cricket fan, and there's nothing better than going out and almost first ball hit one to the boundary. Yeah, I'm not one of those Jeffrey players that likes to, bat himself in over 2 days in Test cricket and prod a single here there. No, I want to come out swinging. Okay, and yes, people can certainly criticize me for my boisterousness and saying quite openly what I want to achieve. But when we talk about dividends here, we're very clear in where we think we're going to be by the end of June. And with that in mind, I would love to give something back to shareholders. I would. And we've got a dividend policy. We may have to waive a number of those conditions. But to be able to do that would be the sort of start that I want to achieve for this company as we move to these steady state cash flows. Sorry, Mark, a long answer to a short question. Apologies.
No, it's all right. It's a good subject to talk about. I think this next question's one word answer. It was last time. The annual accounts and how they're progressing, will they be completed on time? Last time you said yes.
I'm still saying yes.
Good. Okay, good. So that's confirmed again. It feels like we're a big fish in a very small pond on Aquis. Whilst it has served our early growth well, are there any plans for future listings in the United Kingdom, or what are the plans for the future listings in the UK, Kenya and South Africa? I know they're on the cards.
Yeah, look, I want us to not be a big fish in a small pond. I want investors not to have an excuse to say, oh, we can't invest in Marula because they're on Aquis or this, that, the other. I actually think Aquis is a better market than AIM. I think the success stories on Aquis, or rather some of the disasters that you see on AIM, demonstrate that it's not necessarily a better market. The challenge is perception. Let's be honest, the challenge is perception. Aquis has been a great market for us. And I had a call last week with the senior team there at Aquis. I get on very well with them. They gave me a gong to bang here in the office. So thanks, guys.
Oh, you got your gong, didn't you? Yes. Yeah.
I've got the gong here. And I'm supposed to be joining them in London on the 14th. So 15th, sorry, this time tomorrow. This time a week tomorrow, I should say. So look, we've got ambitions to be on bigger exchanges. But the Aquis exchange now, given what it's just gone through with the takeover by the Swiss, you've just got to keep taking stock of where things are. The Aquis exchange has probably got some of the best trading technology out of all the exchanges, and that's something to bear in mind. But look, we need to do things, and I've certainly got ambitions on the main board. I've got companies that are on the main board. But I'd like to get there in an efficient way, and whether that comes from a dual listing, whether that comes from a corporate action, then let's see. But we're looking at ways of getting greater interest in our stock, in our story, and how that comes about in a multitude of different ways.
Okay, it's good to hear you're looking at getting extra interest, because another question was, can we get some broker notes? I know they don't come free, those broker notes, but yeah, any activity that can be done to attract new investors. And I know that with the was it the NSE listing that there was a lot of interest, but they had to understand the company had to be profitable, I think you were saying last time. So they don't really understand explorers.
Yeah.
So again, there's a wealth of people waiting there effectively.
Yeah, there is. And look, the NSE listing is something which we are doing. And
Yeah.
we're tied up. I hope that wasn't a yeah, Mark. But anyway.
So, no, sorry. No,
look.
We have discussed the NSE listing, and I think it's clear.
We've just been speaking with Kenyan Wall Street, who have got a joint venture arrangement with the NSE here. One of the things which is apparent is, yes, they don't understand mining here. There's been one big mining company in Kenya, and that's been base titanium, mineral sands. They never listed here. Big project, and it closed in December of last year. An incredibly good company, actually Western Australian, did very well. But from an investment point of view, there's never been a real mining company on the stock exchange here. It's almost going to be an education process. people here that invest in the markets are largely dividend players, and they're looking at profits. They don't understand that whole transformation of a junior exploration company into a mid-tier producer into a bigger company. So it's very clear that for us to attract the sort of interest that I think, and everybody's telling me is here, we have to have a bigger presence in Kenya. And we've got a very profitable presence here. So some of the stuff which we hope to announce over the coming period will clearly demonstrate what we're doing to get that broader support and validation of our business model. And I think that will help us there. That will get a lot of interest here. But I think as well, once we get on the Nairobi exchange, that's actually a higher tier market recognized internationally than Aquis. And that opens up other market opportunities for us. So I'm not just going to list on other exchanges for the sake of listing on other exchanges. We've got to make sure that where we do list, there's the interest there. And I've been disappointed with the A2X over there. That's come about not because of the technology, but rather because of the broker's technology, not the market's technology. And I've got 2 guys working on that in South Africa at the moment, and hopefully that'll change. But that's been a frustrating process. I'll be very honest about that.
Okay. And you mentioned, or someone picked up a tweet, and I think you just mentioned it, so working with the team at Kenyan Wall Street. So is that in relation to the NSE?
Yeah, look, they're one of the big kind of financial publications here. Andrew's a great guy, their CEO. We had one of the conference calls yesterday. We're working with them as part of the build-up to this. So you're going to see a lot more news flow here in Kenyan regional in the regional marketplace, which is getting us up and recognized more than what you can get on our other platforms that we've got. So very pleased to be working with him. Everybody wants us to be listed. Don't get me wrong here. They want to see us here. It's the process we've just got to go through now to get it across the line.
Okay, good. Right. Last couple of 3 questions here. So will Marula look to publish quarterly revenue and progress reports for each asset rather than relying on event-driven updates about future plans?
Yeah, I think I said that earlier. We want to move away from, I think one of our members on the advisory committee turns around to me and goes, less is more. And, to do these quarterly reports, giving people a better indication in that period, as you move into production, steady state production, so we become more of call it a commodity play as opposed to an exploration play, then I think that's something we're clearly focused on.
Okay. We talked about Botswana earlier. You referred to it as the Switzerland of Africa. Of course, you have a project there now, but any considerations to get other projects there, maybe a copper project in Botswana?
Oh, look, there's a lot of projects there. There's no question about it. But I think our copper asset, other than what I see Robert Friedland have up at Ivanhoe, and I'm not saying this just to, get a soundbite or get people talking. I actually think we've got one of the best potential copper projects in Africa. I really do. And I think we've obviously got to drill test that. We've got to get consistent revenue, consistent productions. But I actually think we've found something quite special there at Kinusi. That is mirrored by Richard Lloyd, a very experienced geologist. That's mirrored by geologists that have come up from consulting groups such as MSA. Mark Nally, who used to be on our board, okay, he went up there. Mark Nally was the founder and the initial CEO of Moxico Resources, who, like I say, have just started production in Zambia at Zambia's newest copper mine. He knows copper. When he saw this thing, it was amazing. So I actually think what we've got in Tanzania from a copper thing is better than anything you'll find in Botswana. So there, I've said it.
Okay, good. Right, 3 last quick questions, Jason. What's your favorite project? Kinusi, probably. Well,
yeah, I love it. I mean, look, I know, can you see the video? I don't know if you can. I haven't got lumps of manganese on my desk. I haven't got lumps of lithium. I've got some great copper samples on my desk. So yeah, I love Kinusi. I think the potential there is something special. And I've said that time and time.
And it's the same answer for the next question. What would give the most, or what would generate the most profit for Marula over the next 10 years?
I think I've said, if you look at our DSO, our phase 1 project there at Kinusi, we've come out with the revenue lines there. You know, you're selling 25% con at the moment for about $1,750 a ton, give or take. The margins there are very significant, and they're only going to grow as you move towards the copper cathode production. So I actually, over the 10 years, can we just focus on the next 1 or 2? I actually think Kinusi is going to have such a huge impact on this business. If Kinusi delivers half as much as what I think, then we'll be on the radar screen for a lot of big copper companies around the world.
Good. And finally, from the questions that were submitted, and I only see one extra so far, we'll see how we go. We've covered an awful lot. It's been over an hour and a half now. But which project will surprise investors the most, do you think?
It's actually one that's not quite in the portfolio yet.
Okay.
There you go.
Okay.
Out of the existing one, I actually think Khalifi will deliver a lot. I mean, there's a reason why we're working with groups such as Bauti. There's a reason why we've thrown a lot of effort into that over the past 3 to 6 months. But I actually think what we have planned over the second half of this year, I think that'll really surprise a few people, and it'll be a pleasant surprise.
Okay. So one question that was typed in earlier was about Quinton. Do you think he'll still become chairman as originally intended, or have things moved on?
I think as a company, we've moved on. I think, and that's not being disparaging to him in any way or whatever. You've seen in some of my other companies how we've brought in executives from the various jurisdictions. You've seen, a big influence of Kenyan and South African directors. I think with Marula now, what you'll see is, as we transition to a potential new exchange, as we get bigger here, I think the chairman figure that we will have in our group will be a very significant and very successful businessman getting involved with this company. And I'm not saying that's important, I'm just saying it'll be more of a hands-on person here in East and Central Africa.
Okay, thank you. I do see another question has been typed. How many non-dilutive debt options are Marula exploring? When will any funds land in the company's bank account?
We are working on, as any company should be doing, you're always looking at ways of managing your working capital and your funding agreements. How else can you look at projects without having the ability to source capital? So with what we have in mind, there are ambitions to grow further this quarter and in the second half of this year, as I've said. So we are expecting to fund those through the debt side of the balance sheet. So funding will come in as and when we make decisions there.
Okay. Thank you, Jason. So I know some people are typing. I don't want to take too much more of your time because you've taken a fair bit anyway.
I'm fine, Mark.
You're good. You're good.
Okay. No. I don't like. What is it tonight? It's Inter Barcelona tonight, isn't it? Football. I'm not too fussed about that one.
Okay.
It's the Arsenal games I'm more interested in.
I see someone has put their hand up. I don't know if they want to speak. It's the Jitters. I'm just going to allow you to speak if you want. If you did it by mistake, that's also fine. But if you do want to ask a question, the Jitters, just unmute and speak. Otherwise, I see some questions have been typed, so I'll just ask.
Yeah, it was only a quick one. Come out with the kids. Unless I missed it, was there any news on Kweza Rivia? Apart from that, I'm very happy with everything I've heard tonight.
That's another one in the background at the moment. I think our focus is very much on Blesburg in South Africa. That's from a commodity perspective, you've seen challenges faced in the cobalt space, but I think again it's allocation of funding towards key assets. And in South Africa, Blesburg, Northern Cape, the high value lithium, the tungsten, the tantalum, the niobium, etc. That's our immediate attention now.
Okay, good. Thank you, and enjoy your evening out with your kids. That's very good of you to join. I see another couple of questions. Will there be any forward-looking statements? Excuse me. As part of the accounts.
Do you put forward-looking stuff? I think no, we will not be releasing. We will release on a project by project basis. We will be releasing the approved budgets for each project. So that'll come through there. But in the annual accounts, no. Clearly, when the auditors sign off on that, they'll be giving their opinion, their going concern comments as when applicable. And as a company, you have the opportunity to put in your comments there, as we did, I think, last year. So we will clearly be stating where we're going as a business there. The annual accounts, as you know, are for the period ending 31 Dec. Over the course of this quarter, clearly things are changing in terms of cash generation. So we will be referencing that. We will be referencing the budgets we've already released for Khalifi. And obviously before the end of this quarter, we will be releasing budgets for Kinusi as well, and for some of the other projects. So you will inadvertently see forward-looking statements to basically address any concerns raised by the auditors in regards to our financial position. But over the course of this month and next, I believe the cash generation from the sales will obviously address any concerns that they have.
Okay, thanks, Jason. If anyone does have any questions they want to ask verbally, just put your hand up in the Telegram and I'll see that and be able to allow you to speak. There are about 3, I think, typed questions I see. So feldspar, I know we've talked about that, and I think this person's been listening for the whole time, but obviously there's a little bit of doubt because the question is, feldspar sales have been talked about for over a year. Will they actually happen?
It's something Hank's been pushing with, I think, 2-3 parties there. They've all had samples. They've all tested that. It's just been coming back to pricing and what's acceptable and what's not acceptable. So that's one of the things we've been looking at as a way of utilizing that industrial mineral byproduct. So yes, feldspar, we hope to get some of those sales contracts locked down as quickly as we can.
Okay.
That's something which Hank's pushing all the time.
Okay. Is a $350 million NPV pre-tax accurate for a 10-year Kinusi phase 2? Will we get a phase 2 NPV figure released soon?
Look, I can't come up with that number. I think Kinusi, you'll have the budget which goes out for that, and that will include the detail. That'll follow the metallurgical report that Darren provides, which will also include this low-grade material that they're going. So that they're obviously assessing now. We'll then put out the budget, which will include obviously nettable the capital expenditure and so on. So I would wait to see those numbers before commenting on this.
And have we been successful in shipping product to a complete full trial? So have we learned anything from the transportation side of moving product? Any snags in these trials?
Yeah, look, I think last year we learned that even though South Africa is an amazingly first world mining jurisdiction, a great legal setup and everything, I think it's also demonstrates that sometimes the planets align and they catch you, they catch you out. You had challenges with the rail in South Africa because the state rail company didn't maintain it and didn't make payments to the Chinese that were upgrading it. So that caused problems on the rail. You then had so many people move to road, and then you had kilometers after kilometers after kilometers of people queuing up at the various major terminals to get product out. You then had a process of, there was discussions of privatizing the ports, and a lot of the port workers went on strike, which caused problems at ports. It was almost the perfect storm. Then on top of that, you had trucks which rather than go through South African ports, were then diverted to go out through Maputo on that Maputo corridor. And then the rail there became overloaded, and the trucks again on the road were just too much for the ports to handle. So, one thing we've learned is that even the most tried and tested and call it first world infrastructure, road, rail, port, at times can fail. And there's limited controls you can have. I know Quinton, for instance, he was trying to get coal out at that time. And some of the demurrage, some of the charges that he got hit with on a monthly basis almost broke his business, because coal was locked there at rail sidings. It was locked there in trucks at port. So logistics, I think, it's logistics here in Africa is the lifeblood of many economies. You look at Mombasa Port and the amount of vehicles, trucks coming through the containerized market here in East Africa is huge. And Mombasa is one of the key ports, servicing Zambia, servicing Uganda, servicing Tanzania as well in places. So if there's anything I learned, was to expect the unexpected. And that's why we deal with experts such as Scan Global. They've got the capabilities. There's no point us trying to pretend that we know how to deal with it. So, you've got to expect the unexpected. But hopefully those perfect storms don't come around too many times. So, you've just got to always look at different ways of doing things and be flexible in your approach, but also ensure that you've got, and this is a lesson for us as we move forward, ensure as we move forward that you've got the working capital to manage your operations during these periods.
Okay, so you've seen it as you've learned some things, and you feel prepared.
Absolutely.
Okay. Accounts, yes, they're coming out. We've got that answer. So is there an extension to that? Will there be an advance, or will we have to wait until the last week? People are obviously getting concerned that the share price is going to suspend again. So you said yes, the accounts are coming out, but 6 or 7 weeks away, people are getting the jitters, I think.
Look, they'll come out. There's no question.
Okay.
And I'm not just being very flippant about this. This is a very important thing for us here.
Mm-hmm.
And there is a lot of attention. And again, Martin working with Moore Stevens, with the work that's been going on there, the finance team here, the team in London. Yes, we do have a new auditor in place, and one that we're very confident of working with. Yeah. So, we push ahead on that.
It caught a lot of companies out, didn't it, a year or two ago? That so many companies I saw suspended because of that. It was obviously something changed and caused a lot of problems. But it's important. So
there's a number of new financial standards which come out, and there's one actually with one of the other companies I'm dealing with at the moment, Caracal. The new accounts and standards there. I mean, their accounts are well overdue, but we're at the point of getting them out now. And Jesus, I know accounting speak pretty well now in dealing with these, but there's one of these new accounting standards which will come out, and it has required a lot of work. And like I think I said earlier, I get frustrated with financial statements because I think financial statements should be presented in such a way that your everyday investors should be able to read them and fully understand them. The unfortunate thing is you've got 3, 4, 5 pages of financial accounts and then 50 pages of notes to those accounts. And I just think the balance has gone the wrong way. That's me speaking. I mean, if you cannot explain it succinctly and you've got to go have 50 odd pages of notes to 5 pages of accounts, then that's I just think it's pendulum has swung a bit too far that way. I'm not saying it's wrong. I'm just saying there's a lot of work, and it puts a lot of pressure on auditors as well, and a lot of risk, which is why you see a lot of audit firms not doing accounts for companies on the main board or on this exchange or on this. So it is a challenge. It's not just one faced by us here. It's faced by all companies across all sectors.
Yeah, indeed. Okay, well, thanks, Jason. Two last questions, I think. So is tungsten expected to be a major resource in the enlarged Blesburg area?
Yes, I sincerely hope so, as part of that NCLT project. A lot of historical stuff there on the various tungsten mines. We've had people go to site. Hank, Jana, the team have been there. There's some samples which have taken. We haven't sent them for analysis yet, but that license area is huge. NCLT is a huge area. And I think there's potential for a few extra things to be found there, but the geologists have got to do their work.
Okay. And finally, I don't think there's anything else coming in. I see no hands up, and this is the last question I see here. Are you hoping, it's quite a good one to finish on, are you hoping to get a series of RNSs out this week?
Don't we always? There's an insatiable appetite for investors these days across all companies, across all sectors. Knowledge and information is so critical to everybody. The smartphones that we all have means that information is immediately accessible. We don't have to wait till the next day or the weekend's newspapers to read things. It's there at our fingertips. So it's almost as though we've got this insatiable appetite for more. And look, we've been very fortunate with Marula that we're not a single project company. We've got multiple projects, all at very different stages of development, or close to development, or close to production. So there is a lot of news flow. I've been criticized for putting out too much news. I think what I said earlier, less is more. But there is news flow there. And sometimes enough is never enough. So, we've put out several announcements over the past week. We'll continue to put out news as and when it comes through. So are we hoping to get a series of RNSs out this week? There's more news to come. Yes, there is.
Sure. Excellent. Okay, well, thank you, Jason, so much for that. That's nearly 2 hours of your time, and of course, investors' time as well. I'll just read this final comment. Appreciate the time taken to host this Q&A session, and also, Jason, for all your answers, as always. A lot to cover. So we'll leave it there because it is getting late for everyone. But thank you again. Thank you very much, Jason. That's a lot of good, candid discussion we've had there, I think, this evening. And I'm sure it won't be too long until we're speaking again, but I'll let everyone get back to their evening. And thank you, Jason, again.
Mark, I really appreciate it, and I really enjoyed the session. So thanks for all your questions, and thanks for everybody that participated and stayed on for so long. Really, thank you very much.
Oh, thank you, everyone. And this recording will be out tomorrow on Stopbox. For now, good night.
Thanks, guys. Thanks all.
If you enjoyed this interview, then give us a thumbs up, a like or a retweet. Subscribe to us on YouTube or follow us on Twitter, and hit that notification bell to be the first to know when we release new content. There's loads of great content on our website too, across all our programs at stopboxmedia.com. Thank you for watching.